This will help with high RPM shiftability. It'll give you much better, quicker shifts. Guys, so what we have here is our Specialty Z Walbro fuel pump install kit. Over the years, and since E85 has become really popular, we've been installing a lot of Walbro fuel pumps that are made for E85. They handle more flow, so they come in a 450 liter per hour pump, 520, and for a really long time, we had just been installing them and making the installs work, but I wanted something that was going to be a lot cleaner when installing it into the factory assembly. So we have a factory assembly for a lot of guys. One of these pumps is really good for a majority of guys. So they'll easily do 600 to 700 wheel on E85. But we wanted something that was really simple, really clean to install versus using hose clamps and, you know, modifying the fuel pressure relief valve. Since these have relief valves, they'll open up at a certain pressure and flow. We've made units that match the size of the Walbro outlet, and we're using submersible PTFE hose that actually will stand the test of time versus using a rubber hose that's not meant to be submerged or to be used with ethanol fuels. So it's beautiful. I love it because this guy just slides into our little bracket assembly and the pump goes into here, and we're able to attach everything. And with our inlet barb, it has a brand new genuine Nissan O-ring. It goes right in, bolts in. You reuse the bolts from the factory assembly, and it makes it a super quick and clean install. We've gone away with it using our adapter, and the reason why is this guy will open up when you don't want it to. As soon as you start making elevated fuel pressure, you just get a dump. All right, so I've removed the fuel pressure relief valve out of the factory assembly, but you just get a dump of fuel pressure. And basically, there are ways you can modify it, but we didn't want to have to weld these. We didn't want to have to put plugs and tap it. We wanted to make something for the masses and something really easy to install. Cut down on the installation time. We came out with this guy, completely deletes it. Super simple install. Yeah, one big reason is we had to get rid of this guy that's found on the twin turbos. So one big plus is having this fitting, besides having the bracket that holds the pump in place. And the best thing about it is we've got the larger diameter, as you can see, for the Walbro outlet fitting, so that both these are 10 millimeter, and you're not trying to take up the slack in a rubber hose and using a rubber hose with a clamp that cuts into it and it fails, and then you're still leaking fuel at the end of the day. After a few months, a year, whatever it is, this is going to be a solid install. You won't have to worry about. And for those guys who are also just replacing their pump because they're really old, you know, they're over 30 years old in some instances, this is a great solution to do that. Drops right in. Obviously the Walbro is compatible with ethanol and gasoline, and it will get the job done in a really simple, quick installation. As next up, and this is a product that we came out with back probably in 2003, 2004. Bringing them back, one of the reasons why is because a lot of guys would look for a lightweight battery solution in their street car, obviously in their race car. And the nice thing with these mounts is that you can put it just about anywhere. So if you need to make room in the engine bay, you can mount this in the engine bay. You can mount this in the back of the vehicle. And with the size that it is, besides the obvious weight savings, leaves you with a lot more room for other activities, right? If you want to run a catch can in the engine bay, you know, for example, we'll sometimes do these in a Z32, and we'll mount our map sensor and our wideband controller right on the firewall. With this in its place, it saves us a lot of space. This will work for the Odyssey PC680 batteries, and for the folks that also want to use the Braille battery. The Braille batteries are really good. They pack a bigger punch as far as cranking and cold cranking amps than the Odyssey PC680 does. The mount's really nice, made of aluminum. These guys are threaded in and really easy to remove the posts if you need to for quick servicing. So anytime you need to replace the battery, it's really easy to just unbolt the 3 nuts, pop the battery out, and you're good to go. Another really nice, cool, simple product. We designed these originally for the NA2 twin turbo guys on the 300zx. We found that after you install the radiator, there was a considerable gap. To soak that gap up, we had this air guide designed. It utilizes the factory bolt holes that are on the core support for the NA chassis, where the radiator brackets used to mount. When you go to a twin turbo, you have to relocate the brackets further outside of the core support. We designed it for the NAs, but we use them on the twin turbos all the time. These holes, you'll just need to drill and tap to add this air guide. Super easy. We drill and tap them for a 6mm. You can pair that with your nice fancy hardware, and you've got a nice clean air guide. This is meant to work on the stock radiator setups, so something like the factory Nissan, the factory Koyo, and the Denso radiators. I know some of those are getting a little harder to get. We like to use the stock radiators for a lot of the street cars because they actually cool well for a street car that has air conditioning in it. A lot of times when we did testing, the bigger radiators on a car that had air conditioning suffered, and they would start to creep up and overheat, whereas we found with the stock radiator guys, on air conditioning, hot days, it would actually stay cool. So this is just a nice little dress-up item, and it helps get that airflow. Instead of going and escaping, it goes and it stays into the radiator. So really nice, clean stainless steel, and our logo is etched into it. So we've had this clutch out for quite some time. In fact, it's the only clutch we offer now. We used to offer a few different clutches for the non-turbo, for the turbos. Now we just exclusively sell this clutch. We had our Max Street. We don't offer it anymore. One of the big reasons why is this clutch kind of does it all, and with everybody trying to make as much power, you know, this isn't the early 2000s, you know, 500 horsepower doesn't impress anybody. So we have this clutch for the Z32 guys. We really like this clutch. As you'll notice, it has 5 pucks. The reduced amount of pucks is going to help us have more increased torque capacity. We also use a metallic puck for that. It can handle more of the abuse. If you're going to go to the drag strip, if you're going to drift it, it's going to take more abuse. It is aluminum. This is one thing we did to save a lot of weight. This will help with high RPM shiftability when you are racing it. It won't slow down the input shaft on the transmission as much, so it'll give you much better, quicker shifts without damaging the transmission. One thing that we did update and redo is we had a segmented flywheel that was made for us. We steered away from that lately just because it was nice having the ability to rebuild it, but sometimes when it came down to rebuilding the flywheel, there were issues trying to remove some of the old hardware. The ring gears were also a separate piece from the actual flywheel. So on occasion, you would get a ring gear that would have the hardware loosen up or the welds break. So what we ended up doing was coming out with just a single piece flywheel from chromoly steel. And we were actually able to keep the weight just about the same as our aluminum counterpart that we had. And I'm really happy with these. We've got our torque settings, because I can't tell you how often we would get phone calls asking, hey, what do I need to torque the flywheel bolts to? What do I need to crank down the pressure plate bolts to? So you have them etched right in there, so you know exactly what your torque is going to be. 30 foot-pounds, and we've got 65 foot-pounds on here. So really nice product, and it is machinable, so you can resurface this. So we've got our logo, and then also it's a twin turbo flywheel because we have it in there. So no more guessing if you have a NA or a TT, if you happen to be the second owner of this flywheel. So on the flywheel, etched into it, we also have our torque settings. So, we would get a lot of phone calls like, hey, what do I torque down the flywheel bolts to? What do I torque down the pressure plate bolts to? So we've got it right here. You can't forget it. If you can't see it, I can't help you. But here it is, torque to 65 foot-pounds, and the pressure plate bolts, you're gonna torque to 30 foot-pounds. We have our Special DZ AMS fuel filter bracket. This is kind of an add-on or a fix to a lot of the very popular fuel filter kits for the Infiniti Q50 and Q60. We had a lot of in-house customers after we'd install the fuel filter kit that were complaining of NVH, which is noise, vibration, and harshness. This filter, the way it comes from AMS, installs directly to the firewall, and when you do that, there's a lot of pulsations through the fuel line, and that creates vibration. So you'd install it, you've got your really nice Infiniti luxury car, and you're driving, and even just sitting there at idle, you start to feel a vibration, and you're like, what is that? Well, a lot of it is because of the way some of these fuel kits are mounted. You're gonna get that noise, you're gonna get that vibration, and that harshness. So I don't know about you, in my nice Infiniti, I don't wanna be feeling any of that stuff. So we came up with a really simple, cost-effective little quick solution, and we made this bracket. This bracket does mount right by the intercooler, and it relocates the filter. So instead of it being bolted to the firewall, it's going to be bolted where the intercooler mount is on the left-hand side of that intercooler. So really quick, really simple fix, and it'll get rid of that vibration. If you didn't already know, we offer quite a range of our flex fuel kits. We offer them for the VQ35DE. So if you need to know what your ethanol content is, which I highly recommend you know what it is instead of just guessing, our kits allow you to do that. It incorporates the flex fuel sensor with the Fuelit analyzer. It is Bluetooth, so all you need is the app, which is free to use, and you'll know immediately what your flex fuel ethanol content is. There is no way to incorporate it into the ECU on the factory cars, but hopefully one day there will be. With the 370Z, the VQ37, using EcuTech, of course, we have the ability to do that. And the update we are going to be making this year is to have them work through the CAN bus. So we'll have a CAN high, we'll have a CAN low, and those will wire directly into the ECU. We're not going to be hijacking the evap anymore, and it will make it a compliant, still a simple install. Just going to add one more wire, and we'll be able to do that through our CAN bus setup via EcuTech. Same thing with the GTRs. On the GTR, we'll do the same thing. We will offer updates for the guys that do need to update their analyzer. If they want to update them, they'll have the option to go to our new CAN bus setup without having to change anything else aside of the analyzer. We'll make it really, really simple. But again, you'll notice these kits that we offer for the newer Nissan platforms, we use the factory style hose, so we incorporate and keep the factory dampers, and we also keep the factory style line. The benefit to all of this is we're not having to add any PTFE lines that you need to route in a specific manner. It's really like an OE install, and it looks OE, which is the best part. You pop the hood, you wouldn't even know there's anything under the bay. A lot of times, you're not even gonna see the sensors. On the GTR and on the VR applications, so the new Z, the Q50, Q60 3.0s, you're going to be able to hide the sensor, not even know about it. You're not going to have to install some weird lines, AN lines that are going to fail. You can keep your catch can, you can keep all of your factory setup and not have to give anything up with our kits. And the best thing about them again is you can check your ethanol content using your phone on the FuelIt app. Right. So we've also recently started making a kit for the Z32, both the non-turbo and the twin turbos, flex fuel kit. This will allow you to incorporate into the factory ECU using an Istune Type 2 board with the feature pack. Then you can get your 0 to 5 volt right for the Istune, and you can have full flex fuel capabilities. You can also use it on any of your standalones, Haltech, AEM, Link, and it's a really super clean install. Again, we're aiming more for the basic install guys who have the factory fuel feed lines. This will basically go in between the return line and that line that bolts to the factory intake manifold setup and makes it a really simple install. We also do offer the installation if you want us to wire it all in for you into your ECU. For the guys running the Istune Type 2 boards, we can do that for you as well. So we've got these lines. This side will return back into the factory hard line, and this setup will go into the factory hard line that goes on the intake manifold, and in between you'll have your flex fuel sensor. Again, a simple, clean AN install, and you're not having to wrestle hoses onto these. Some guys do like to put these on, not the way it's supposed to be done. There is no barb holding it. Again, when you're dealing with fuel, you don't want to take that risk. So we have all the appropriate connections and lines to make it all happen.